Hello everyone and welcome to day 3 on Veer. This is the 100th mile podcast and we are covering one of the toughest ultra races on the planet, 4,000 kilometers across Western Europe, and not very long to do it and a lot of mountains in the way. Today I've got with me the organisers Ian and Ingebord, who are going to give their professional insight into what's been going on. Why don't we start with an overview of what's changed in the last 24 hours, guys? We've been dot watching like mad, haven't we? Where do we lie with the men's racing?
So Adam Bialek has passed over the Picos through both gates, hotly pursued by Will Vousden in second, closely followed by Marc Buechel, and he is being caught by Becker with a huge chasing group behind him, including guys like Paolo Botti, Rob Roy Cameron, Christian Jakubek, Michele Pagano, Ivan Norelgran, Chris Thomas, Johannes Sario and Alex Gruel. They're all very tightly packed together, and followed closely behind them Sam Muscat from Australia, the rookie, and Jair Hoogland has seemingly recovered from his initial stomach problems on day 1.
And there's still not too much separating them.
Yeah, so it does seem that Adam is dominant as usual. He's got a good lead. He has had lots of bad luck in the past, but it is something in the region of 50k over Will, and there's probably another 50k back to Marc and Lucas. A very tight gap between them and the next guys, less than 20k I reckon.
Oh, it's looking like it's shaping up, but who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that. So we'll keep an eye on it. Ingeborg, tell us what's happening in the women's race.
Yeah, in the women's race, I've been so impressed with how Joanna has managed the conditions. She is currently in 8th, so she is in that field of the pursuers, right up there with everyone else. She is through the 2 gates in the Picos, and is going to continue along towards the Pyrenees. She's just very, very consistent, and clearly she is very experienced. We'll come to it a little bit later, but Nikki, who was right behind, there was an accident during the night, so Nikki is no longer in the race. So we've got Saz followed by Anissa, and then we have got Fiona, who's on her own route, a little bit out on the east. She's making good progress. She's also a rookie, and it's very impressive to see her determination keeping going on a route a bit out by herself with very tough conditions. Also worth mentioning Grinshina. I think her positivity has been contagious for everyone who has met her, and she also continues on. And then if you want to look at some nice photos and reporting, Sophie Gatto is the master of siestas. She hasn't made it over the Sistema Central yet, so she is still in the heat near Madrid and reporting 38 degrees, and she's having a siesta at the moment.
Sensible lady.
I think I would do the same.
Yeah, we're a bit luckier, aren't we? Because we're actually up here in the Picos Mountains, and it's got quite a nice sound and breeze. So they need to hurry up and get over here, I think, if they're not already here.
Mid to high 20s.
Perfect. Don't you wish you were here? We have other categories in the race. We have a para category. Do you want to tell us about our para athlete?
Yeah, Wayne Harrod. He's a lower limb amputee and a veteran. He has already overcome a lot. When we saw him on the first day, he was actually needing to do what's more difficult for him a lot more often. Dismounting, walking around with his prosthetic that's really made for cycling, to go and get hydration, cool down, even taking on and off his prosthesis in order to look after his residual limb. He's reporting that he needs to actually remove some of the liner to get more comfortable. You know, the heat does create some swelling, and it can be an extra sweating, which is a real challenge for Wayne. Still, you know, his attitude, you know, he just says, I am going to crack on here, and he has really made good progress and is right there in the mid pack of the riders.
I can't get my head around what Wayne is doing. It's absolutely remarkable, and that discomfort that he had from day one as well.
Yeah.
He's just so determined, isn't he? And the way he's pushing through it, it's amazing to see him do this. And if he makes it to the end, which will be a heck of an achievement, and there's no shame if he doesn't, I think that will be the biggest distance a para-athlete has ever covered in an ultra race.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's taken on something massive here. Massive.
He will be the first paracyclist to complete a 4,000 kilometre unsupported ultra race, and he's got many more stories about the kind of sufferings he's overcome.
And we will definitely catch up with Wayne and more of his story later in the race. We have a pairs category. Can we hear a little bit about them?
Yeah, so the pairs category is quite interesting, as we have a very stereotypical Swiss pair who are moving like clockwork. They are stopping, they're being very efficient, they've got matching bikes, matching jerseys, very Swiss in nature. And then you have two veteran Italians, Wally and Alberto Vaghi. They have, I think that they're at the upper end of the age categories. I won't say how old they are, but let's say they are very experienced. So they're in second, and then they're followed by a solo out of the pair. So Matt Downey has continued on since day one, when he and Harry Johnson decided to split up when Harry was really suffering with some heat exhaustion, some heat stroke. Harry has just started moving off last night again.
Which is great, isn't it? Because we were worried that he was going to scratch. We were pretty sure he stayed still for an awful long time, and then woke up this morning and he jumped up on the map. So he's still moving, and they've obviously got a plan, but they're not riding together.
Yes, that's right. And it's not obviously the most efficient way, but it's very British. And in between Matt and Harry are another Italian pair, Daniele Mezzapesa and Filippo Lolaico. They are around Segovia. They have split up slightly, but maybe just the track is reading wrong. Maybe one has stopped to get food and ordering for the other one if they're very efficient. And then you've got the very salty Steve Whittaker and Richard Mackey from Washington State. So that transatlantic alliance, they seem to be struggling somewhat. They're only just crossing the Sistema Central to the west of Madrid. They've chosen an interesting westerly route, so they are still moving forwards.
So just to clarify for anyone who's not familiar with the pairs category, our British pair who were split up, if Matt managed to overtake everyone in front, the Swiss pair cross the finish line first and Harry comes in a week later, would they win? What does that mean for them?
The time is taken, just like most team time trials and team sports, on the last person across the finishing line. So yes, it would be Harry's time. So Harry needs to catch up, or Matt needs to wait a lot longer. So we'll see. We'll hear those stories, because they're recording each other. They're recording their stories. So
do you think there's any advantage to them riding separately?
No. When I think you look at the differences between solo and pairs, the real advantage is both drafting each other, taking turns in the front, and also there is the advantage of having somebody there to look after you, who you know is there with the same objective to reach the end as quickly as possible. So they've lost both advantages by splitting up so much. It's unintentional in this case. We don't know what's happened with Filippo and Daniele, but yeah, I think this is not the most efficient way. Unlike the Swiss.
And I imagine that puts a lot of pressure on Harry as well. You know,
Yeah.
like he feels like he probably has to catch Matt up, and maybe he'll be pushing harder than he should be. Psychologically, there's all kind of dilemmas you might find yourself in, I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, pairs is actually a complicated category, because being totally in sync is difficult, and you could end up trying to ride at someone else's pace, or your psychology of feeling like you're letting someone down, or the psychology where you feel like someone is just stopping all the time and you want to crack on. You know, it's just very difficult to manage, because your mind, when you're trying to do 4,000 kilometers, gets tired too, just like your legs and your body.
So there's added challenges that the solo competitors don't have, and I think a lot of people might look at that category and go, well, that's kind of the easy way out. You've got someone there to help you, but as you've just discussed there's definitely added pressures, aren't there, and different scenarios that they're going to have to cope with that the solo riders won't.
Yeah, I mean the complexities of the pairs category versus the solo category is one to discuss at a later date. But yeah, I think with the pairs, you really need to be in sync, and it can be something as simple as toilet breaks, as sleep breaks. Are these guys in sync, or are they needing to stop twice as often? Because as a solo rider, you only need to look after yourself. You only need to take one toilet break.
If you're fascinated by this dot watching, then you can head over to Madcap and check out the race and where the riders have been and where they're moving to, and see if you get obsessed with these dots as we are and tracking them all day long. It can be a quite absorbing pastime, can't it? Especially when you're in the race, but even when you're sitting at home. Go and check that out. Right, it's time for something a bit lighthearted. It's coming out. It's Hannibal's segment of the day with Ian. Ian, give us another lovely anecdote from Hannibal's army and their march across the route that the riders are taking.
So a lot of people don't really know about where the elephants came from. Most are thought to have been African elephants, smaller kind of bush elephants, but also with a number of much larger Syrian elephants. And the most famous of these is the elephant Saurus, who was apparently the last survivor. But we'll talk about what happened to him and what happened to all the other elephants another time. But all 38 elephants which Hannibal took from Spain made it over the Pyrenees and made it over the Alps in spite of terrible conditions and many fights. So they really looked after those elephants despite the amount that they ate. Much more than horses. You can imagine how much an elephant eats in one day. To take enough food, to find enough fodder for 38 elephants and have them all survive. They were well looked after.
I think that leaves me with more questions than I have answers about this ridiculous, ambitious wars that Hannibal embarked on. If you have any questions about Hannibal and his elephant army, please stick them in the comments below the video and we'll get Ian to do his best to answer them for you. Okay, so there's something it's unavoidable we need to talk about on a much more serious note, and it's always a jeopardy, a risk with these races where you're in big countries, open terrain, and so many riders. But something very difficult happened last night during the race, didn't it? And you got a phone call in the early hours of this morning.
Yeah, at 3:30 I had a very panicked call from Nikki. I thought I was having a nightmare. I thought she was scratching. She sounded like she was asphyxiating, breathing so hard. I tried to calm her down. We got straight onto the emergency services while keeping her on the line. We got her to look after herself, wrap herself in her emergency blanket, which is mandatory kit for all riders, and we managed to get an ambulance, the police, a member of our team, and a number of riders, 4 in total, to basically look out for her and make sure that she was safe and all her belongings were secured.
And we've heard from Nikki this morning. She's in hospital. She's doing okay considering the circumstances. She is thanking everyone for the well wishes that have come in. She'll probably be in hospital for some days, but Nikki is fine. She is tough, and her spirits are actually high considering the circumstances.
It's the worst nightmare of any race organizer, any rider, other competitors, for all of us that these sort of things happen. But I think a huge testament last night to the riders and the staff who were right on top of the situation. 4 riders picked up their phones or were at the scene within 15 minutes, half an hour. The emergency services were there within half an hour. So was one of our team. And a huge hats off to the Spanish paramedics and emergency services who were there with her and have been treating her and have been fussing over her all day in the hospital, and she's got nothing but praise for them, as have we. So we're wishing Nikki a very speedy recovery. She's a remarkable athlete. She was right up there at the vying for the win in this race, and before it happened she had just won the Solstice sprint. Remarkable athlete. just a remarkable human being and a lovely person. And I was really fortunate to talk to her just before the race, and we were hoping to share some of those sound bites and that interview as the race progressed, but unfortunately that's not going to happen now. So we thought it would be really nice to share some of that with you in the moment and give you some idea of just the sort of determined and remarkable character that Nikki is. So have a watch of this.
I feel like I've been a cyclist for a long time now. If you go back 10 years, I first got into the ultra distance stuff when I was 25. So the first long distance stuff I did was Audax. It's just a great way to get that experience just riding really big miles. So I did the Paris Audax in 2015. But before the Audax long distance stuff, I did have a short stint doing road racing, but it wasn't for me. The reasons for riding a bike weren't really pure competitive and physical strength. It was more like the adventure and pushing my own mental limits, my own physical limits. So I think it was just like a natural progression, if you like, to get into the ultra distance scene. And it was really taking off in sort of my mid-20s when the TCR was becoming more known and getting off the ground. So I think it was the Transcontinental. Like, a lot of people noticed that and they really got captured by it. So I've got a lot to owe for, Last Start and the TCR for getting me hooked on this whole ultra distance thing, really. I don't come from like a family of epic adventurers and that kind of thing. It's very, very much something that I've just gone off and done on my own. My dad is a cyclist, but sort of weekend warrior type person, so definitely not ultra distance caliber. My colleagues at work, they just can't believe that I just take a long weekend off work now just to go and do like a 1,000-kilometre race and then just go back to work a few days later. I'm not a full-time athlete. I'm not paid by anyone, so it's very much on my own terms. And I mean, in a typical week, I might average 300 to 400 kilometres, which might be anything between sort of 10 and 15 hours. I think once you've been doing it for a long time, you almost take it for granted, to be honest. Once you understand what your body is capable of dealing with, the first and foremost is just to enjoy the race and enjoy the journey. And when I say enjoy the race, I mean like I will be racing it, and I want to enjoy the experience of pushing myself. And it's not, for me, it's not just a fast tour. I will be out there to kind of like see what I can do physically and see how fast I can get to the finish line. So I'm quite an ambitious person. I think I am quite competitive in myself, not necessarily against other people, but more against myself and just pushing my own preconceived boundaries. And I mean, it would be really nice to, obviously I've won the women's Wild West Country and then the Solstice Sprint. I was first woman at both of those, so to finish first woman at Veer as well would be absolutely incredible. And I think that's the number one goal. Whether that will happen comes down to preparation, but also luck. So you have to have luck on your side. You have to be resilient, and everything just has to fall into place, really. I'm quite good in terms of just riding my own race, and I know that it's another thing that you can't control. You can't control what other people are doing around you and how well they've prepared, how strong they are, how well they're doing mentally. Then there's no point stressing or deliberating over those things that you can't control. So you might as well just focus on your own like demons and battles and just crack on with it, really. These are quite cliche like concerns, to be honest, and it's always the same thing, and it's very much things that are out of your control, like the injuries. You can plan and you can have your setup dialed as well as possible, but sometimes things just come out of nowhere.
Finally, we're going to focus on the very sharp end of the race today, aren't we? The top three men. That's what we're going to spend a little bit of time analysing. I'm going to hand this over to you, Ian. Who have we got up there in our podium spots?
So the current podium is Adam Bialek, who's nearing Pamplona. Then we have Will Vousden in the Picos, and then we have Marc Buechel, who may have been overtaken as we speak by Becker, winner of the race across France this year.
But Adam is out ahead in a league of his own, and if you're a bit intrigued about Adam, I did actually have a bit of a chat with him before the start of the race, and we'll watch some of that now, and you can get an insight into just what makes this man tick.
Hello, my name is Adam Bialek. I'm from Göppingen, Germany. I'm a bikepacking racer since 2020. Since 2021 I started winning races. First one was, I believe, the Picos bike race 2021, followed by the Austrian Extreme bike race, and a few weeks after that the first race to Poland that I won. So my season 2022 kicked off with another race to Poland, which I already won. Also won. Sorry. I continued with the Transberica race in June 2021, also first place. And 2023 was also a very successful season for me, with victories in the race to Poland, the Picos bike race, and Transberica. So people wonder why I was able to win that many races in the past. I believe it's my passion and maybe also my physical abilities. Also in conjunction with my relatively simple and lightweight bike setup, I believe. This might be the key to success for me. Route planning, I believe this is a really important thing, especially in such long races. I do spend a lot of time for it, probably much more than the average person. The thing is not only plotting your personal route, it's also trying to find out where do I get my food from, where are places to sleep. Of course you can do it on the way, but I tend to do my research beforehand, which obviously takes a lot of time. When we're talking about the physical preparation, I personally don't use a structured training plan. I just ride my bike a lot. I enjoy it, it's part of my life, and it's the best thing to do after work, in my opinion.
I think Adam's really pulled out a slightly bigger gap, although Will Vousden has been very consistent. Adam's very well known for just riding so fast uphill and being a really great descender. And we've got a video of that as we caught him at the top of the Picos climb, the highest point there. We managed to catch him, we managed to get a few words out of him before we tried to follow him on the descent, but it wasn't more than about 30 seconds before he lost us. This is a guy who'd been riding for something in the region of 36 hours. He was descending through fog, he'd put his jacket on, he's so experienced at looking after himself. Riding for 36 hours, exhausted, sleep deprived, he hadn't slept at that point, and yet he still lost us in 30 seconds. This is a climber and a descender, a guy who loves mountains, who turned around and said, yeah, I'm slightly disappointed at the amount of climbing, I wanted more.
One of our media crew, Ryan, was well rested and ready to film him, pursue him down one of the descents, wasn't he, yesterday afternoon, and Ryan managed about a minute, and he just couldn't believe his eyes. He said he just couldn't keep up. He just physically couldn't keep up on this descent with a man who's been non-stop riding for 2 days. Such was the skill and the speed at which Adam was riding.
Absolutely. And Will Vousden is very consistent. He's very well prepared. He's a doctor, actually, not a medical doctor, but a doctor, and we can find out more about him later.
I actually managed to catch up with him in the early hours this morning, and we can have a look at what he had to say.
Will,
Hey.
Tell me about life.
It was very cold coming down off the pass there. I read 2.5 degrees on my Garmin. Quite a change after last couple of days. 42 down to 2.5 degrees. Yeah, happy to be back down in the valley where it's a bit warmer. Yeah, a bit exhausted. Didn't have a great night's sleep last night. I ate something that disagreed with me. Spent more time than I wanted to on the toilet and next to it, trying to sort myself out. But I'm alright now. Managed to get back on the bike. Just tired.
How's everything been going up to this point?
Yeah, I mean the first couple of days. The first day was brutal, and then yesterday was a little bit better. It wasn't so hot. I set myself a goal of getting to a hotel that was checking closed at 10, and I was really having to push quite hard to get there before checking closed. So a little bit exhausted physically. Yeah, I've been trying to avoid looking at the tracker because I don't really want to know, what's going on. So I prefer to ride in ignorance, really, and just do the best I can. Yeah, so happy enough. Got some of the aches and pains that you might expect after being on the bike for a few days. But yeah.
Tell us where you're feeling it.
Down there. Usual, I think. Feet have got a few hot spots there. But yeah, otherwise that's the majority of it, really. Everything else is okay for the most part. Got a nasty sunburn though. Kept applying sunscreen, it wasn't enough. So I'm going to be quite pink, I think, in the next few days. Yeah, just knackered. Right, I best get going.
Yes.
I don't know if these lights are going to change. It looks like they're not going to. What's the deal with these?
We're waiting for a pedestrian to cross,
Okay.
but we might be here a while. So.
All right then. Well, I'll just be on my way.
Marc Buechel is a bit of a surprise to be in third place. He is neck and neck with Becker, who seems to be much fresher. He's typically off-road. That's the kind of race he enjoys. So to do a road race and to do so well is very impressive. The other guy who is really impressing is Michele Pagano. Now he's previously suffered from Schirmer's neck, but he's changed his setup. Maybe to listening to my advice on getting some aero bars, so he's probably a lot faster, a lot more comfortable.
Schirmer's neck is a term that gets bandied around the ultra cycling world a lot, but I think most other people don't know what it means. Do you want to try and explain?
So Schirmer's neck was named after a guy. I can't remember his first name, but his surname was Schirmer. I think this was in the race across America where his neck muscles failed after so long riding long distance every day. I think he probably wasn't trained enough, but essentially his neck could not hold up the weight of his head. Heads are surprisingly heavy things.
About 5 kilograms. Yeah, and it's a lot of weight, and you really find in these long races, it's a common affliction. Your legs can be great, your stomach can be great, all those other things that hold people back. But when your neck goes and you can't lift your head up, it's game over, and it's probably something that we'll end up seeing in the next week.
To another surprise rider who's currently fifth is Paolo Botti. Now Paolo Botti we talked about yesterday, where he had mistakenly he'd made an accident with his routing. He made no excuses and he put his hands up and he was expecting to be disqualified by us, but instead of disqualifying him or threatening him with penalties, we just said your penalty is you just got to go back down the way you came up. So he'd wasted something in the region of 600 meters of extra climbing, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours in terms of just time, and the extra energy required to expend to climb that mount and to ride that mount, plus the time in free routing to reroute his way forwards in a legitimate way. Then we have Rob Roy Cameron, who was, I think, a third at one point on day one, and he dropped down a lot of places, taking a much more easterly route, crossing the Sistema Central. I think he was trying to be quite clever in finding somewhere to cross which was much lower, but I think he's found that it was much longer to ride.
So there we have some of the top riders. Okay, finally, predictions for tomorrow. What do you think we're going to see over the next 24 hours before we sit down, and then I can grill you on it and see how right and wrong you were. Ingeborg, what are you expecting?
I think the riders that are now coming, we've talked a lot about the people at the front, so taking a few steps back, there are a lot of people we haven't talked about, the mid-pack and those who are towards the back. Those who are towards the back, I think, will find it harder and harder because they haven't made it out of the really hot plains yet, and temperatures there are still much warmer than they are further north, etc. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more people needing to switch into touring mode or deciding to DNF or just find a way to enjoy it more, because it's really tough if your body is not wanting to take in food and drink and it's still really hot.
Any individual predictions? Anyone you've got your eyes on, you're watching, where you think they might jump up or down the field?
You know what? I'm actually keen to see Rob Roy now back on the same route as the others. Ian's prediction that this easterly route has cost him a lot. He's still in 7th, and he's still right among those riders. So I'm interested in seeing how he continues from there.
Ian, your predictions. What are we going to be talking about tomorrow? What do you think who are going to be the movers and shakers?
I think there are some very consistent guys who are going to come through. The guys that we haven't really talked about very much are the ones like Ivan Nordil Gran. He's from Norway. He has been very consistently up at the front 10, around or in the top 10. He was suffering from numerous tyre issues on the day before the start and on the morning of the start. So it is really great to see that our bike mechanic Pete Broomwagon has managed to fix that for him. So I think he's quite pleased with probably how his tyres are holding up.
And just to be clear, that was fixed before the race, not during the race, of course, because
Correct,
there is
on the
no
morning.
assistance
Yes.
during the race.
That's correct. Unsupported, it was fixed on the morning, the very morning, maybe an hour before the start. So that was kind of tenterhook's nervousness of fixing that in time for the start at night. Another guy who seems to be consistently up front, but we've talked about him yesterday, very poor routing in some cases, doing some off-road voluntarily or maybe involuntarily. He didn't know about it maybe. Christian Jakobek, who came second in TCR number 8.
And Christian's actually one of my heroes from yesterday, because he was ahead and he got knocked behind, but then in the middle of the night, after all that stress, he was one of the riders who jumped straight on the call and rushed to see if he could help Nicky, and absolute superstar, and wishing him and all the other riders the best of luck. Yeah. as they continue on.
Yeah, I mean he's a lovely guy. He's one of our friends, and it's great to see him moving forwards. Another guy to watch out for is Chris Thomas, also very consistent. He seems to be up there, continuing to chase. And somebody that we haven't really talked about is Johannes Sario, and how he got to the start of Via.
It's a story for another day. I'm gonna make a bit of a rogue prediction, because so far everyone thinks that Adam, who's in the lead, is not human and is a machine. He just seems to keep moving at the same speed or go faster. So I predict he's going to have a sleep, and I think Will might get a bit closer to him, but that might be controversial. Anyway, that is all you're getting from us today, but there'll be plenty more tomorrow, so please tune back in to hear more of the antics and the excitement from Via Racing. In the meantime, you can go away and look at Madcap and see where everyone's getting to. From Ingeborg, Ian, myself, John, that is it from the 100th Mile podcast for today, and Via. Ciao.